Hello, I'm Jancy McPhee, neuroscientist and executive director of SciArt Exchange.
What if we could bring people from all ages, backgrounds, and cultures together to solve the challenges ahead? What could we achieve? Where could we go? SciArt Exchange was conceived based on the International Humans in Space Art Program, which I created while a NASA scientist 10 years ago. Originally to give youth worldwide a chance to learn about space and relay their vision of the future through visual, literary, musical, and video art. After all, children are the future. We then use their multimedia artwork in displays, performances, and celebrations that engaged others in a global dialogue about the future of space exploration. Through our activities, SciArt Exchange invites, prepares, and convenes people to discuss and potentially solve space, science, and technology challenges using a multimedia approach. We aim to foster communication, creativity, and collaboration across cultural and intellectual boundaries. We've worked with children, early career professionals, and full career scientists and artists. 9,000 people from over 60 countries have participated in our contests and campaigns, and over 3 million people have seen or heard the artwork in person worldwide. Great things happen at the intersection of science, technology, and the arts. This is a mentally creative and challenging space, encouraging us to use our whole brain and the best skills and processes to work together. It's exciting, it's important, it's our future, and we invite you to come join us.
I hope you enjoyed the introduction to our nonprofit SciArt Exchange and to me as well. For the rest of our time, I'd like to talk to you about what happens when we bring science and the liberal arts together. First, we'll talk about the value of STEM plus art for your students, and then I will tell you a little bit about some space and STEM-themed art resources that we have for you to use. And I'll also talk about some activities we have that you can include in your lessons or even do for yourself. So let's set the stage a little bit. What we have now and going forward is a very challenging world, full of problems that are complicated and will need solving by our students as they enter the workforce. And these solutions are going to be novel and complicated and require a lot of capabilities that include science, technology, engineering, and math, but also additional skills, often called the 21st century skills, such as communication, creativity, and teamwork. What SciArt Exchange does, as you heard earlier, is to use art integration techniques to foster the engagement, innovation, and collaboration our students will need, and to prepare us to be better able to solve the future space, science, and technology challenges ahead. Getting kids excited about STEM and learning in general is hard at any time, but it's particularly hard right now while we're working virtually and in hybrid education. And so we might need to focus a little bit more on exactly how we train communication and use good communication skills with our students. And nobody knows your audience better than you do. So let's just start off with this little simple example. On the left, you can see an article that is meant to draw in an audience to come talk about meteorites. And this is the attracting article. And you can see it uses a lot of challenging words that not everybody will know, as opposed to the communication example on the right, which says, our meteorites traveled millions of miles to get here. The least you could do is come touch it. Space is freaking awesome. That's a much more motivating way to communicate about a very interesting subject. But it's not just important to use the right language, but also to include telling our students about why they should be interested in a topic. Why should they care? And using storytelling is a fabulous way to get them interested and understand why. And why is storytelling so important? Well, it's really basically the essence of being human. It's how we've taught each other since our prehistoric beginnings. It's how we've kept our history. And it also causes a lot of hormones to be released when we listen to a story. And those help us to focus our attention, to feel empathy with the characters, and even a reward and personal involvement in what's going on in the story. So stories help us to know about problems and how to solve them, and they make strong, meaningful, and lasting impressions on students. The next ingredient for student success is not just the ability to communicate and to use communication to reach them, but also we need to train them how to creatively solve problems so that they can grow up to be innovators. And from this simple Venn diagram, you can see a very basic description of what it takes to be creative. The first is to have an in-depth knowledge base, but not just an in-depth knowledge base. It's important to have a broad knowledge base because being creative is connecting things in ways that have never been connected before. In order to make those connections, a person also has to have an open and imaginative mind and lots of different ways of how to solve problems and to think. Also, in order to be creative, you need to be motivated because being creative is hard. So we need to let our students know that some of the best things come from super hard work, but also to set them up so that we can motivate them, encourage them to think in many different ways, and have a lot of different kinds of knowledge. So how can integrating the arts with STEM be helpful? Well, integrating the arts and humanities can really help you to teach your students and encourage your students to learn not just the science and technology facts that we need them to know, but also gain those other skills that they'll need to be able to contribute and succeed in the future workforce. Now, we already know that art in multiple forms, whether it's visual, literary, musical, or film, can be very powerful communication tools. They're assets for storytelling that inspire people to be motivated. You can see a lot of professional examples here that provide multi-sensory input to understand something, inspiring communication, talking about the why of a topic. They add passion, importance, and a sense of value. They also help to capture the kernel of an idea or in a concept and summarize it. Art also provides us with heroes and role models for us to use that inspire us to do great things. You can see here that I was inspired by the original Star Trek, and I still carry that inspiration with me as an adult as I work in space, science and technology fields, and also STEM plus the arts. Art also provides us with very powerful symbols that can stand for thousands of words in just the single image. And they can tell us about the past or suggest the future. Now, both science and the arts are creative, but there are some similarities and differences in the process of doing either. And it's important to have knowledge of these different approaches and to have many different ways of thinking. It turns out that a lot of our most accomplished STEM innovators also have arts training. In addition, Multidisciplinary teams of scientists and artists have achieved some of the most important technology we have in our hands today. Some of the science and engineering actually took lessons learned from various aspects of art as well. So how can you take advantage of these facts to teach your students using STEAM principles, especially during these times of remote or hybrid learning? Well, the good news is we've got lots of resources for you. The first is, I already told you that we have multiple contests for many different age groups. Our largest set of contests actually are for children. And then we curate all the artwork that came in through these contests for use in displays and performances, but also in the classroom. So that means that we have lots of assets for you, not only to engage your children, but also to use the artwork from previous contests to augment your classes, dress up your lesson plans, show examples of STEAM in action, and to really help you to engage the attention and motivation of your students. It may also help you to bring in some students that don't normally self-identify as STEM kids by giving them other formats like film and music and literature to get excited about STEM. And later, especially with the activities that I'll bring up in a minute, you can present to your children the opportunity to actually try to do some STEAM work, fully integrating space, science, and technology with multimedia art, and as well as presenting these examples of artwork that we already have. You can also use the artwork as perhaps art breaks in between your other lesson plans. And we have lots of different kinds of art, as I mentioned. Here are a few examples of artwork from the age group of your students. This is just the visual art. We do also have literature, film, and music. And our contests are always international. So there's another element of cross-cultural interest that you can relay to your students. We also have artwork created by adults that you can use in your classrooms. Here are some examples from our 2018 Project Mars poster and film competition. These are brilliant works of art, and the different competitions talk about the ISS, the moon, Mars, all the science and technology that has to evolve to support space missions that are complicated like that. Please try to take time to see some of the films from this Project Mars competition. They're really fabulous and would make a wonderful asset to add to your classrooms. All of this information about our contests that are open and example galleries of artwork are located on the Contest tab on the SciArtExchange.org website. Please visit to learn a little bit more about what's available, and then don't be afraid to contact us to ask about things that are not in our sample galleries. We don't have an open contest at this moment. We actually just closed one, but we do have something that's open that you could engage your students in right now, and it's going to stay open. It's called the Design Your Habitat campaign. This campaign includes podcasts and activities as resources for your students. The podcasts are about 15 to 30 minutes long, and they come from astronauts, architects, musicians, artists, designers, chefs, scientists, writers, all sorts of different people. They're all talking about their work innovating by integrating right at the line between the arts and STEM. And they connect space to our lives on Earth and tips for thriving, even when conditions are not ideal, such as when they're more isolated and confined. Students can use the activities under the Design Your Habitat campaign and share their creations through our submission portal, and if they're good, we'll display them on our gallery online. So that should help motivate them to want to do some really interesting things. There are also activities for teachers because we're asking teachers to contribute to our growing list of STEAM type activities. And you can even get continuing education credit by working with us to learn how to create a STEAM activity. Please visit the Design Your Habitat tab on our website at SciArtExchange.org. I'm going to show a video right now so that you can learn a little bit more about Design Your Habitat. And afterwards, if you have any questions, please ask.
We're all in this together.
So it was in response to the global pandemic that was happening. We created a project called the Design Your Habitat campaign, which had a theme about comparing what's the normally isolated and confined conditions of space capsules and space habitats and space environments in general for humans to live in, and what we were now going through here around the world in being more socially distant. So these activities are still open, but we're adding more and more for students to use throughout the summer and maybe even in the fall and the spring. Welcome to Design Your Habitat.
I feel like the kind of science fiction that I write, mostly, like with both Extant and Reverie, were what they would call out here in Hollywood, like grounded science fiction, sort of near future, and they were sort of just a leap, 5 minutes into the future. There's a technology that may exist, self-driving cars.
I came from a STEAmy family. I grew up with not only artists and musicians, but I also grew up with astronomers, mathematicians, and lawyers. So we always loved incorporating science with the arts. And one of the consistent things for my whole family was a love for the stars.
Favorite architects said that we are all astronauts on board Spaceship Earth. And I think it's really a wonderful thing to see when you're designing for a totally alien environment where we haven't been born into, that what the Earth does for us. How much, of our physical being and emotional being is tied to this earth.
I just want to start off with kind of giving a little backstory of why I want to be an aerospace engineer. Because when I was a really little kid, I can remember hearing about New Horizons and how it was going further than anything we've ever made before, and I thought that would be cool. And so when I was really young, I decided I want to do something like that.
The thing about it is that if you want to put all of your interests together, nothing does that like the space program. It's a combination of everything that I really love. It's marine science, diving, photography, geology, flying, international aspects. What for me is cool is cooking in strange places, and above all, I think kind of meeting people that are just like you.